hadn't gotten to it yet. So when Mike came back to us, they had changes to not only what I suggested, but actually their zoning code, and a lot of which almost became an entire overhaul. And one of the things that I think we try to do, especially if we see that you're going to be spending a lot of money that you never intended to spend, but looking to make that perfect code that you want and how you want it, I sat down and, well, not sat down with, but talked with Mike for a while over the phone, and we figured out a way that we could handle that moving forward so that they're not spending $18,000 more than they ever thought they would to begin with. So that's one of the things that we like to do, is we like to say to you, listen, I don't think you realize how much money you might be spending. We don't want you to, we don't want to scare you away. We're not going to make these changes and just build the heck out of you. We want to talk with you about what might be important now, how can we address this as we move on. And so we can implement those changes, but if you start looking at a legal review and report and you want to do everything that's in there, including creating different ordinances, you might want to do a hierarchy and say, well, let's handle these right now. This is what's important to us. This is necessary to us. And then move on to the next thing, next phase. So, set it up in a couple of different phases so that maybe you can budget. One other thing to keep in the back of your mind, most municipalities should probably recodify every 5 to 10 years. The books get unwieldy, and one of the things that we try to do to keep page counts down, so for instance, if you get a chapter in there that goes from page 1 to page 20, and you want to take out a large chunk that's in that middle and scrap it and insert something new, it takes it up to 40 pages. We're not going to redo every one of those pages because you're going to be billed for every one of those pages. We don't want to do that to you. So we start using what are called A and B pages. So we want text to flow naturally, but it also reduces the amount of pages. So you don't just insert a huge amount of text in the middle and bump out 40 pages, so all of a sudden you're paying twice the amount that you ever thought you would have to pay. When you do those A and B pages, they make a code book get bigger. So why you want to recodify every 5 to 10 years is, number one, with us, if you recodify, you get a legal review and report. And it's for free. If you're paying that much to recodify, we're going to do that for free for you. Number two, you get rid of, we organize and do the text in a way that those A and B pages aren't in there. So your book is not so unwieldy. We get better text, better flow. And, as I said, usually you are getting another legal review and report. So sometimes you're taking things out that are old, that you no longer need. You're adjusting things. Maybe you have a more streamlined ordinance now that has not been integrated into the code book, but takes out 30 pages that are in there right now, and you've got a better ordinance that's maybe 15 pages. So, we're not, believe me, we want to make our money, but we're not out to bilk you and cause you to spend a lot of money unnecessarily. We want you to get a new code, a nice code. We want to provide you with the service you need, but we don't want to, have you send in everything saying, yes, do this, yes, do this, yes, do this, have it add in 200 pages, and then we bill you. We will not do that. We'll talk to you. When it comes in, somebody's going to look at it and go, wait a minute, this is a lot more probably than you intended. And
have you looked at our code at all? Just like even perused it?
I have not had the chance. I was on vacation last week and just got back yesterday, so no, I have not. But if you have a particular question for me, I can certainly, once I get home tomorrow, I can take a look.
Okay. I was just curious if you looked at it.
It sounds to me like you've most likely been on top of it for the most part. We shouldn't be getting a code book that's got ordinances just shoved in willy-nilly here and there. It sounds to me like you've been supplementing. So, I think we provide better service, and I like our product better than general code. I mean, they're fine people. I've dealt with many of them. They are fine, nice people, and a lot of municipalities like them. But I like the way that we do
What's the
it.
average time with that $3,500 price for the initial, what is the average time that
For
it
the
takes to
legal- for the
to
legal
get back to
review.
a municipality?
Once it gets put into everything, and by that I mean it gets put into our system, you know, it's a first come, first served thing. So, you know, you're in a line of other municipalities that are getting legal reviews and reports, but if we were to recodify you, the initial recodification, I believe, is 6 months, within, I think it's 45 days, the legal review is supposed to come out, and then once you respond, it's another three months to, from start to finish, if you recodify or initially codify, it's generally a 9-month period. The only thing that extends it is how long it takes you to review. Now, you would be in a unique situation. You wouldn't necessarily have a time period in which to send something back to us because you're not recodifying or initially codifying. So, you know, in order to implement the changes that you would say, yes, make these changes as a result of those responses, you know, if you work on it for a year, you work on it for a year and we get it in and, you know, we implement changes. If you work on it in 2 months and we get it back in, you get put into the queue and went in the supplement department and they look at it and, you know, supplements come out pretty quickly. It's usually within a 45-day period.
The suggestions that you mentioned,
Mhm.
it sounds like it hits a couple different areas, but one is suggestions of things that you can adopt. What do you do to generate that? Do you look at our surrounding municipalities of this area for what they have for us to adopt, or how are you grabbing that for this municipality?
I actually look at a lot of different things. You know, there are a lot of state associations that I know some of the people that work there. And I talk with them, figure out trends. Sometimes they have some language here and there I look at. Sometimes, you know, I start looking at what if similar municipalities, whether they're on the east side, the central part of the state, or the west side of the state, you know, similar needs, similar municipalities. In my looking at it, and if I've looked at it and go, well, geez, that's a pretty recent ordinance and that's a good ordinance, you know, that's something I'll take and I'll say, hey, take a look at this. This is what a similar municipality is using. It's recent, it's good law. Do you want to use something like this or not? Or do you want to use a portion of it or not? Or I will sometimes take out some language that I don't think is going to be applicable for you or necessary for you. So I will craft, and sometimes, you know, for lack of a better term, sometimes I'll Frankenstein something together just from my own knowledge of what's necessary. But one of the things that we do tell our clients, and that's in any state, is that you can look at our websites, you can poke around there. If we have model ordinances, and quite frankly, even practicing as a solicitor, there's usually one model ordinance everybody starts with, and it goes around.
Right.
You will find that a lot in zoning, you will find that a lot in saldo, you'll find that a lot in floodplains. And in fact, we point out a lot of things when we're working on it. We'll say, oh geez, listen, there's an internal reference to a section or an ordinance that does not exist in your world here. We think it might be this. Is this a correct internal reference, or is there something else that you intended to reference internally in this ordinance? And usually it is a product of that having been a model ordinance at one point in multiple municipalities using it.
So would you get back with the legal review before you went on to that other spot of suggestions, or does that all come back at once? Like
The legal review comes out as a whole.
Okay.
It's a whole. It comes out at once. You know, depending on how much well, like I said, I start going through page by page. I start reading. I start making sure that you're complying with that. You know, and even as simple things like administratively. You know, do you have are you referencing the right number of people for this particular board? Or and Pennsylvania's odd. There's just a broad delegation of authority generally to municipalities, specific powers, and you know, case law is usually what ends up defining many particular things. But you know, it might take me a bit longer for one municipality versus another, just because their code book's a lot older. You know, my thought is, based on the fact that you've kept up with your code book, you know, yours probably is a 10-day project at most, probably. But, if I come across something that I think takes some more time, I'm gonna spend some more time on it.
Sure. Could you send Lisa the other municipalities that you've done?
Certainly,
Consider a list?
yes, not a
That's
problem,
good.
not a
Yeah.
problem. Yeah, I think I've got a list in my computer, so I can do that.
That would be great, yeah, for Chester County, just to see.
Yeah,
that would-
not a
yeah.
problem, not a problem at all. I can
That'd help
certainly
us
do
look
that.
at what they have and, yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, but thank you very much, yeah.
Sure.
Thank you very
sure.
much, appreciate
Appreciate
your
it,
time
yeah.
coming out.
Well, it was nice talking with you and meeting you all, and I'll get back to, I think I've got your email,
Yes,
right?
yes.
I can email you?
Absolutely.
Okay, certainly, I will do that. And in case you want it, there's a group of business cards there, my phone number, email address, I can hand those up if you'd like.
Thank you.
For everybody, my email's on there, so you may
Great.
certainly email me if you wish to. Thanks.
Safe travels back to Pittsburgh.
Oh, it should be good. I'm glad I'm here. My husband said southwestern PA got pounded and there's no electricity, so.
Dave,
Okay.
what you got for us?
I got a stack of paper for you.
We see that.
I knew that.
It's amazing there's a
Mr.
tree
Green
happy,
happy.
you know, this thing. We do use some paper, don't we?
Yes, especially through this kind of process, you will definitely use some paper. So last month, after we concluded the meeting, there was a list of action items. I'll go through those as I hand out these packets. One was to speak with your solicitor, Mr. Brady, about the logistics for funding a public sewer option and/or recouping funds that the township would outlay to implement that sort of alternative.
Thank you, Wilson's.
Yes.
There
you are.
Thank you.
To look at the Coastal Area School District contribution and/or if they still have a viable project at the South Brandywine Middle School. Look at, with the two gentlemen from Pennsylvania Water Company here, there was a questionnaire, a sample questionnaire that they handed out to residents to kind of gauge interest in a public sewer extension or public water extension. Get a list of addresses for the Ursuline area, Dover Farms area to Tawny, so we can plan on getting out postcards and coordinating the public meeting. And I wanted to apologize to the board, it was my mistake on the date for my vacation. First thing I did was go home and check with the boss to make sure I had the right date, and as it turned out, our family had two separate weeks up there. The cousins have the week after us, and we have the first week, so I apologize for having to re-coordinate that meeting date. The remaining action items were to get an SMP, subdivision management program sample, and to look at the cost comparison for implementing the Dover Farms area public sewer option first, and then Ursuline area piggybacking off of that infrastructure, which I did. So, kind of to go through the documents you have. I think Mr. Lambert asked to have a sample SMP, and from the beginning of your packet, the first document is Westtown Township. And I know Connie kind of circulated after the last meeting a slideshow presentation that was prepared for Westtown Township's Act 537 and their subdivision management program. This is the public education guidance document that they issued. It's available on their website. In fact, Westtown Township has a pretty good website with a lot of information related to their SMP on there. So this covers how to maintain your septic system, what the municipality's responsibility is, what the individual property owner's responsibilities are, and so on. So it's, the DEP likes to make sure municipalities reach out and educate the general public on what SMP is, and it's a good thing to have. So when this township implements their SMP, it doesn't have to be as comprehensive as Westtown's, but to just have some maybe fact sheets or even a small pamphlet booklet or some way, to help residents understand. So I'm
Can I
sorry.
ask you a question on this?
Sure.
Can we post this information as general information if perhaps we don't adopt an SMP? Can we put that up on the website just as general knowledge, or?
As a general, you mean like a link to?
Yeah, like
West
general
End?
knowledge, because I don't know who's gonna enforce this, that's the whole thing, like,
Sure, yeah.
you just heard Rob.
Right. Yeah.
Who's going out
Yeah,
to look at all these,
Yeah.
so that's my, I understand what Wilson's saying, but I don't know how the enforcement will
So-
come to be.
I might be able to answer your question, kind of going through this
Sure.
stuff. So that first document is, that Westtown Township SMP is what the DEP would refer to as an enhanced SMP. So it requires a licensed or certified Pennsylvania Septic Management Association individual to inspect your on-lot system. It requires the individual property owner to pump their system once every 3 years and provide that record to the township. The township has to track that. It requires, implementing ordinances or regulations within the township that require water efficient fixtures, faucets, so on and so forth. That is a result of a municipality that kind of turned a blind eye to lots that were small in size, didn't have adequate area for replacement systems, had bad soils, and kind of got into some hot water with the DEP in that they said, okay, well, we don't trust you, township, to implement this plan because you've neglected these systems for the pre-regulatory system from earlier than 1972. You're not tracking, the condition of these systems. You're not helping the property owners, educating them, and making sure they pump their systems regularly and maintain the systems properly. So we're going to make you do that with this enhanced septic management program. And then they also mandated certain other sections of that township be tied to public sewer. So that's kind of a worst case scenario. The ordinance that's related to that, which is the enhanced SMP, is ordinance 2013-3. It should be right after that guidance document from Westtown. That's Westtown's SMP ordinance. Okay, which identifies, who they have to have inspect, what the rotation schedule is for, certain phases within the municipality. In fact, within that guidance document, I think there's some mapping toward the end. There are color maps. Kind of, if you flip through there real quick, you'll see some colorized maps toward the end of that show, I think, the 3 or 4 phases within the municipality that, how they split the municipality and who has to report when, which is consistent with what they have identified in their ordinance. So.
Is Westtown the closest one to us that has this?
Well, they're an example that has the enhanced version, so.
Does anyone else around East Valleyfield have the enhanced version?
Right now, West Brandywine Township is going through their Act 537 plan update, and they have a draft ordinance that is requiring somebody that's licensed to inspect. They are implementing tracking software that's in coordination with the county's pumping program. But again, that's a situation where there's some areas that have smaller lots that, there were some issues with code enforcement there that the DEP said, well, if you can't keep an eye on changes in uses and regulating sewage with changes in uses, how can we trust you to implement an SMP? They already had provisions adopted in an ordinance for an SMP that were never enforced as well. So it's a little bit different in this regard that East Valleyfield is coming in. There is actually a draft ordinance that the prior solicitor drafted, which represents kind of the base model of the minimum requirements that the DEP would like to see. So kind of working down the list, there's a document after that. It's a model ordinance from Pennsylvania Septic Management Association. That is going to be more in line with what Westtown Township has adopted. It's obviously the PSMA issues a model ordinance. They're going to require somebody that's licensed by PSMA to do the inspections. So just keep that in mind as you go through it. After that document, there was a solicitor's draft ordinance, and March 23rd, 2012. So this was back when the original Act 537 plan was being processed. I think there ended up being two versions of the plan at the DEP. Nevertheless, that solicitor's draft was a genesis of the DEP's change in policy in that anytime an area in a municipality's 537 plan was going to remain with on-lot sewage disposal, they used chapter 71.71 of PA code, which says that the municipality has to ensure that adequate sewage disposal is being provided, and they lean on the SMP, which chapter 71.71 specifically identifies septic management in there. So, and it goes on to identify the minimum requirements, which basically is pumping requirements once every 3 years, providing a receipted bill to the municipality. I do know that Chester County Health Department has reinitiated their pumping program, and they are able to track on behalf of the municipality. So that's definitely something I think East Fallowfield would benefit from in working with the health department, on maybe a quarterly basis or a twice a year basis, just to say, okay.
The county will give that to you, give
Oh,
it to the
absolutely.
township.
Yep.
Who gets pumped and when.
Yep, exactly, yeah. And if the municipality is split into 2 or 3 different areas, phasing wise, since everybody's required to pump once every 3 years, the logical split is, 3 different areas of the township. That way you cycle through it, on an annual basis and not go through the whole municipality once every 3 years, and then one admin is going nuts for 3 months trying to keep track of all the records and issuing citations and trying to, recover fees that are to be collected for the program. So that's sort of what, I know that's what Westtown has implemented, I think, 3 or 4 phases, but they've implemented a fee to cover the cost of administration of the program. West Brandowine's doing the same thing. And there's other samples of other municipalities in the area. Those are certainly the 2 closer ones. I know Beth Mahoney from the DEP had mentioned a couple other ones that are, out in Montgomery County and Bucks County. So, and I can certainly get those as well. But they're all going to have to follow the DEP's requirements as far as what's covered in that SMP. So, I think the Westtown information is more as a frame of reference that the DEP, if they come down and say this is an enhanced SMP, this is what we want to see, that's more or less what you're looking at. The guidance document, there's a lot of information in there. I don't think you have to go to that extent in this township. Like I said, I think you can minimize your level of effort and cost and outreach in doing maybe some fact sheets or some pamphlets, sending that stuff out to residents. So that covers the SMP ordinances and the samples. Also in your packet, there are some fact sheets from the DEP that help to explain what septic systems are, as something that you can make available and put a direct link on your website for residents. You can make these available when we have public presentations and public meetings for folks to pick up and take with them. So there's also some information in there about septic management programs and, just a general overview how Chapter 71 applies to that. Minimum standards, which include pumping your tank, the level of sewage you're allowed to have in there before the tank has to be pumped, minimum time frame, maintenance of your ground surrounding your on-lot system to prevent from stormwater drainage, overburdening your drain field, water conservation requirements that I talked about before, operation and maintenance requirements if you have a dosing tank or something of that nature. So a lot of the information pamphlets as far as what is an on-lot system and the various different components it may have are beneficial to property owners. Because like I said, when we went through the needs identification survey, there were folks that had no idea what kind of system they had. They said, well, there's a tank there, and there's a tank there, and we don't know what it does, we don't know where the drain field is. Sometimes they just have a septic tank and a cesspool, which is a pre-regulatory system that could lead to issues if it's not being maintained properly. They may have a dosing tank that they had no idea is supposed to function to take the, liquid effluent from the septic tank and dose it to their drain fields. And if that's not functioning properly, they could have one or no drain fields getting dosed. So things of that nature. I mean, there's a litany list of different kind of septic systems that are out there in different best available technologies for lots that have minimal area and limitations. So, there's also in your information packet fact sheets from the DEP that talk about why should the municipality manage all lot systems, and what the importance of ensuring adequate sewage disposal is, what kind of options are there for establishing an SMP, which we talked a little bit about in the different the samples that were provided. Talks about the logistics of administering the program. To what scale are you going to need to have staff involved? What kind of staff education are you going to need? And what the cost. Some municipalities only spend a couple $100s a year in administrative costs. Some are over thousands of dollars a year, depending on the level of the program that you have to implement. So I think on East Fallowfield would certainly be on the lower end of that.
How do you, I was just looking through the violation section, and it goes to what you're talking about. I get the premise of everyone should get their system pumped every 3 years. What I don't get is that with the county they're keeping track of who's pumping, but they're receiving reports of bad systems from whom? From the people going out there to pump?
Well,
how's it being determined, I mean, even with your data, we asked you for data, like, how did you determine that was bad? Because I'm looking at the penalty of how this process works, with a township representative is the one that, this person now that's been cited, and they're like, what are they talking about? My septic works just fine.
Yeah.
But there's some representative here, according to West Town's model that you're presenting to us, that will be the one that this person goes before, states their case, whether they show up or not, and then at all times, it comes back to the Board of Supervisors to just pardon. I mean, which we have a pardoning system
Right.
here. I mean,
Yeah.
we've done that lots of times here. So I'm trying to see what protects, it's almost like the inspection system of Pennsylvania, that if you go to an inspection station that just happens to sell wipers, you just happen to fail for that wiper blade system on your car. What protects the resident against some guy just saying, you know what, this is a good spot for me to make some money, I'm gonna say that they need a new septic. The next thing you know, how do they fight back, or what does the township even do with Joe's septic system saying it's bad, and we're supposed to take Joe at his face value that this system's bad? I mean, there seems to be like so many areas that the township is now in court itself.
yeah, so it goes back to how the SMP ordinance would be written. Minimum requirements for reporting and enforcement in there. So again, Westtown is, I guess, the extreme case where they're very hands-on, they're very involved. They have one staff member that's an SMP officer that goes out and does, inspections and enforcement.
So they have someone that's doing the inspections themselves, not the
Yes.
septic company?
Yes, they require, I believe, they require the property owner to have a contract with a licensed wastewater hauler, which everybody in Chester County has to have a licensed hauler from the health department.
Right.
Most of those haulers most of those guys are PSMA certified, they can do inspections as well. Now, East Fallowfield doesn't necessarily have to incorporate that inspection requirement and report as part of the pumping schedule. So whoever's their hauler can go out, and if they pump it once every 3 years, they report it to the health department, provide the receipted bill, that property owner sends the bill into the township, or East Fallowfield gets the data from the health department. And you just go down the list for, folks in this area of the township, work with the health department in getting that list generated on an annual basis. And if there's folks that are missing, it's gonna take staff, you know, a third of the level of effort, 25%, however many people are missing, to kind of track those folks down and find out where they are with it, and then obviously it would be an enforcement action.
I see, so not necessarily do the inspect, as you said, this is the most extreme
Right,
case.
right.
So we could just
Yeah,
go with,
so,
okay.
yeah. I think when the draft ordinance for East Fallowfield was written